Stop the cap.
So Captain Solo sent me a video of Kidology. The title of the video is called Men Are Lost. And it was basically a review of the new Barbie movie. And so I watched it. Captain Solo and myself, admittingly have not been watching Kidology's, videos, probably months of content that she's been putting out. I fell off watching her content because I don't know, her takes just seem kind of weird to me. I looked at her initially as this, this real intellectual, but then, things started to kind of have like more of a feminist vibe or more of a, like she's doing her own thing. And this is one of the things that I can't stand about certain people. And I do see this a lot with women in the LGBT community where they drag their personal shit into like society, like how I want to put this, they drag their personal shit into, like, when they want to argue against society, the standards of society, right? And it's kind of like how if you have a gay person living in a heteronormative cisgendered community, right? The majority of the people in that community are focused on their heteronormative cisgender relationships, having children, raising a family, all the traditional stuff, okay? I don't mind or care if a gay person lives in the neighborhood. I don't care or mind if the gay person wants to have conversations about, violence against gay people or, attacks on gay people, verbal attacks, just shit that's just not cool, right? Gay people have always been here. Gay people are always going to be here. Don't care, right? Do I want my kids being, influenced by that? Do I want my kids, thinking that that's somehow, normal? No, I do not. But that does not mean that a gay couple couldn't be, my next door neighbor. I just have a conversation with my child like, hey, that's not normal. Now, if my child was gay and they felt that way, that's a different story. I personally am one who believes that, yes, people can be influenced by homosexuality if they engage in experimenting at a very young age. However, I do think that, people that have those feelings and are homosexual because they were born that way. We knew who the sweet boy was, in like the first grade. We knew who that was. And then when they came out later at 18, we were not surprised at all. We were like, nigga, I knew you was gay, right? They just, their mannerisms, everything, they were always quote unquote funny, right? But um, the thing is, should a gay person try to completely restructure that entire neighborhood, right? Disrupt all the heteronormative cisgendered families in order to try to, based on their own personal shit, to try to make their position more accepted in the world. I would say no. I would say, why don't you go off and create a gay community, right? Like the gayborhood in Philadelphia, where when you drive into it, you see all the street lights with the LGBTQ, rainbow flags sitting at the top of the poles. It's over there by, 13th Street, right, in Philadelphia. So, and I think the primary intersection is 13th and Sampson. But anyway, what I find with the feminist and these womanists and women who have the orientation of kidology is that they drag their personal shit into how the rest of society should function. They want like a societal shift, right? And they don't recognize how that disrupts everything or disrupts society, to the point that they will be affected. Listening to Kidology's video about the Barbie said to me, she thinks that society is already built and it doesn't have to be maintained. And when you get to asking these women who's maintaining the society, right? it's like they don't have any concept of what you're talking about in terms of the maintenance, right? And this is the whole problem with modern women and modern feminism, right? Because men are the ones that have built and maintained, the physical infrastructure of society. And now you have, all these arguments about, well, women are working in corporate America, women are making their own money, and women therefore don't need men, right? So a lot of the men are unmotivated, right, to engage in society in the classic traditional fashion that they've always engaged in it. That's going to present problems later on, but nobody sees it. Watching her video, I was saying to myself, I sure as hell hope you don't need any bridges being built or any bridges being maintained, because women are not going to go off, and do that. They don't want to do that type of work. I'm not saying that women can't do that type of work. Women did that type of work during World War II, but no, none of the women want to do that type of work. They all want to skip to the leadership positions, working white collar jobs in an air conditioned office. And then, telling, all the lowly men around them, like the custodians and the janitors and the, whoever else, is not, in some managerial position, what to do, and look down their noses at these men. And I'm like, men are the ones that keep society going. Men are the ones that pave the roads. Men are the ones that build the buildings. Men are the ones that are the reason why you're in an air conditioned office space, when it's 90 degrees outside. Men are the ones that run the wire. Men are the ones that, install the plumbing. Men are the ones that maintain the plumb, all this sort of stuff. And so when women act like men are superfluous to society and their existence, it's just like the arrogance of women, when I'm just looking at this, and it's one of those things where, again, it's like that movie, A Day Without Mexicans. It's like, I always say to myself, I'm like, what would it take for women to recognize that society is not just, it just doesn't exist. Society is already here, and that, it has to be maintained. My own personal shit, I almost want men to just shut down. I want men to go on strike for an extended period of time, or arguably just let society collapse, which is, essentially, what we're seeing. And the sad part is, just like in the black community, because all societies don't collapse at the same time, what will end up happening is, as the decline happens, for the majority of men out here who are not engaged or motivated or driven to participate in society, because of their, whatever, sexual lack of access to women, which ultimately is supposed to equate to, starting and raising a family. These, what was I going to say? These men, will just, they just, like she said in her video, do something else. And what I notice is that when men do something else, and then suddenly women realize they're not getting or receiving certain things, then suddenly, then they start trying to compare that group of men to the other group of men in another patriarchy that hasn't collapsed yet, because their women aren't on the bullshit. Not yet, at least. So, it's always, something about, oh, the women over there are oppressed. But then when the men in their society, in their feminist, that is now feminist, go off and do something else, like KIDOLOGY stated, then those same women will go and they'll point to these other societies where the infrastructure is being maintained or it's being expanded or built upon, and then say that you try to shame the men with the idea that you need to be more like those men. Right? Yeah, I'm like, weren't those men the men that you just said, like, last year were oppressive towards their women, and that we need to get away from that? And now that we're away from that, because the productivity of men is no longer there, the drive and the motivation for the productivity is no longer there, now the women start to feel the effects of the crumbling infrastructure and the crumbling neighborhoods and the potholes in the street. Now they start to feel the effects of that, and then they're bitching. You see, I talk about this, going on in the black community being canaries in the coal mine all the time. Yes, we have white supremacy and racism and marginalization to deal with, right? And you see the whole thing with the smash and grabs and the crime. Like, yes, you're going to see that because black African Americans are the most marginalized group. But all the problems that African Americans have, slowly but surely, eventually they will creep into the white community, and we're already seeing that, right? The single mother rate in the white community is astronomically higher than what it was, in the 1950s. The crime rate in the white community is higher than what it was, in the 1950s, or I should say the drug rate, the drug use, is higher. The self deletion, is higher. The fatherless homes higher, which goes into the single motherhood and all that. But I'm saying all these things are higher. I mean, when you go Google Kensington, Philadelphia zombies, and look at and just cars just rolling down the street filming, and you see all those white people living and existing in despair. All right, there's women out there too. But there's a whole lot of men out there, and that flies in the face of the narrative of the perpetual productive white male that's productive due to his whiteness. All right. But I don't mean for this video to be long, which hopefully it will not be. I don't think it will be, because this is just straight to the point. What you see now, and I looked at it, I look at it for what it is. Empires rise and fall. Societies, they can get overtaken and conquered, especially when the society decides it's going to fuck with the dials, when it comes to men. That's something that you should never do, but that's something that stupidly the West did. And so, like I always say, when it comes to, I always hear these, conservatives talk about, we're not the world's police, right? And it's like they don't even understand their own, white supremacy and imperialism. The reason why the United States goes around the world and polices and dumps millions of dollars or billions of dollars, into other nations to try to get their vote at the UN. That's one aspect. But to basically, it's political positioning. That's why you only basically have like three superpowers, the United States, freaking Russia, and China. Right? They go around the world throwing money around, throwing resources. Their economies are strong, and they have massive amounts of infrastructure, and they can produce aircraft carriers and battleships, and they can project that influence around the world. Right? They're buying loyalty, they're buying support. Right? They're even, this even goes to Xi Jinping and his argument about, what did he say? Something to the effect of putting out others' light doesn't make you brighter. Something to that effect. And he was basically talking about U.S. imperialism of trying to prevent everybody else from progressing, because the United States does not want to be challenged. Same arguments I make about white supremacy as it pertains to, why in this society we don't want to have strong black males that can strong black patriarchal males that can economically compete in the marketplace. It's always patriarchy versus patriarchy. And on a bigger scale, it's nation versus nation, or superpower versus superpower. It's all a part of, the whatever you want to call it, ensuring one's own genetic survival, right? And there's levels to this shit. It's like gangs. You got local street gangs, and you got bigger gangs at the county level, and then at the state level, or at the national level, right? Everything just gets bigger and bigger, and you incorporate more and more people, right? And people that may, on a micro scale, you'll have a gang where you have, I don't know, give me something, blacks and Puerto Ricans or something like that. But then, there can be beef between blacks and Puerto Ricans, right? So I'm just saying that when you look at society, when you look at civilizations, this sort of thing is a constant. When a group of women undermines their own men, the rest of the world, the rest of the other patriarchies are not going to collapse. You're not going to crush systemic patriarchy by weakening your own men. No, what's going to happen is you're going to get crushed because your men are weak and they cannot defend against the incursion of other men who are going to say, what's in your wallet? And they're going to come through and they're going to rape, pillage, and plunder. And chances are you're going to get raped and pillaged, and plundered, or you're going to get wiped out. Like, look at the Native Americans. Native Americans got wiped out because Europeans showed up. When's the last time you seen a Native American family sitting at Denny's or Burger King? Unless you're living up there in Sioux Falls or close to a reservation, you're not going to see any Native Americans. You see, they got wiped out. They essentially, lost, and they were, you talk about Mexicans, overtaken by, the European, wiped out with smallpox, and then, the majority of Mexicans today are of mestizo, genetic background, or what do you call that? Mestizo, admixture. And that's what it is. There's been civilizations that have risen and fallen. There have been populations of people that existed for thousands of years. They had history, language, culture, all that stuff, and wiped out because their men could not stop the onslaught, of other groups or even another power. Like, even with like the what do you want to call it? The Persian Empire, and even the Arab caliphates. You know what I mean? They as they expand, they take on soldiers from the populations that they conquer. They're like the necromongers in Chronicles of Riddick. They go in, they take over. Okay, you're going to be soldiers, a part of my army, and those people get incorporated. Same thing with what's going on in China, with the Uyghurs, right? The Chinese, the Han Chinese, which is what Xi Jinping is, he's trying to bring them into the fray, but by eradicating their cultural identity, eradicating their language, eradicating Islam, because those people are Muslim, to bring them into the situation so that they speak Han Chinese, they have a Han Chinese identity, and they will, fight and have the identity, to provide and protect, for China. That's how this shit works. So when I look at women, whether we're talking about the African American community and black women undermining black men, or whether I look at America as a whole and I look at Western women undermining American men, I'm like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing? Because there's plenty of people that would pounce and capitalize on America's weakness or the black community's weakness. And all the women all they care about is their independence and their, I am woman, hear me roar, nonsense. And they don't build or maintain a fucking thing. And all that's going to happen is, the shit's just going to decline. That knowledge is going to be lost over time, in terms of it being passed on, because, in the span of the period where, society's already built and we don't need things to be maintained. Well, eventually you will. And all the people that had that knowledge that were basically, cast to the wayside, when they died with that knowledge. Then you have a society that has an infrastructure that doesn't know what to do, because, the men don't have that knowledge because they're out of practice. We see the same thing in the black community where, when we talk about, the turn of the century for African Americans, right? There were many communities that black people basically built from scratch. And you know why they were able to build from scratch? Because they had the skill sets that they gained from slavery. Not saying that it was a net positive like Governor DeSantis, but what I'm saying is they had skill sets. They knew how to, put in their own staircase, put in their own carpentry. Now everybody runs around and you got to pay somebody to do it. And who's doing it now? The Mexicans. So all the skills that black people had all the way up until about the 1960s, all of that has been lost because black men thought, okay, let me go. I'm either going to go work in a factory, which again, American deindustrialized, so all that's gone, or I'm going to go into corporate America. But we understand how African American men are discriminated against in corporate America. So, but even if they get the job in corporate America and they're making good money, they don't have any of the skill sets to do any of the things, on the property, like landscaping and maintaining, building a deck and stuff like that. They don't have any of those skills, or even working on their own car. And this is where due to the modernization of society, women start thinking that they're on par with men because they don't see men doing those things of maintenance in the community. They don't see that. All they see is, well, I'm in corporate America and he's in corporate America too. I make six figures and he makes six figures too. So why is he any better than me? Right? And you become so out of practice that the women don't recognize this. And the men, even if they have the idea, they don't have the skills. Even if they have the idea that's what they're supposed to be doing. Now, I personally believe, that if there was an absolute need, that men would have, they would rise to the occasion. You know what I mean? But it would have to be, like an existential threat, like all hands on deck type of shit. But what's going on right now is, now you just simply have an exodus. And I don't think that there's really any coming back from that, not just in the black community, but outside the community. Because just like this, the whole thing where, women want to undermine the patriarchy. Okay, well, there's other patriarchies around the world that are going to have, that are going to, try to capitalize on that. Well, by the same token, there's other patriarchies around the world where the women aren't feminist. And so it's like a double-edged sword, where you're just going to start having, and we're already seeing it with Passport Bros, men leaving and exiting and going elsewhere. And they're going to take whatever knowledge they have, elsewhere, or whatever drive they have to acquire knowledge or to build or whatever, they're going to take that elsewhere. Because the main motivator for men, yes, it is family. Like, who wants to do work? Like, seriously, who wants to do work? Captain Solo and I, we had, he apologized for me because, again, even all the years that we've been talking, like, cause he's always asking me about, like, black people fixing up the community and moving into, like, one of these McMansions in Detroit and fixing it and repairing it and everything. And then we watched a bunch of videos, that gay guy with the muscles and numbers, whatnot. And even he was like, nah, you're gonna have somebody living in there because the roaches will come out, and when they're gonna watch your house, watch your car, and when you're not there, they're gonna break in your shit and take your big ass TV and everything else in there. It's like, it's not a smooth transition like that. Right. And then the whole goal was to not move into the black community and just simply gentrify it with uppity black folks. The goal is to basically to be the example, to create opportunities in that environment, to fix and repair it. Now, see, Cap takes pride in fixing and repairing things. Right. But the thing is like kidology, you're talking to a childless person that really doesn't have any intention of having kids. Now, I don't know if kidology intends on having kids or wants to have kids. But again, going back to what pisses me off is the lack of recognition that most people do want to have family and kids. What she's talking when she says, men need to go off and do something else, right? And I know that the society is going to collapse. I'm like, would you be talking that way if you had a 3-year-old daughter or even a 3-year-old son? Where now, again, you'll be gone, but they have to continue to exist in this world. And you've just basically eradicated everything so that you can feel free. So now you have your daughter existing in a non-patriarchal world, and when you got the stupid ass idea that somehow, the society is just going to maintain its modernness with failing boys all over the place, or boys that, are in the street culture, or boys that are not being productive or working. So, you believe all this, and then your child is just, there. I mean, one of the things that Cap constantly says, he's like, I'm glad I don't have any kids. He says that shit constantly whenever he sees, like, the just the fucked up shit that people are doing. And he's just like, this is insane in terms of, all this, the gender stuff, all the, fucking with the dolls when it comes to the roles and stuff. And it's like, he had the position that if men, did what was necessary, like the reason why women were on what they were on is because men were failing or men failed. But see, all that was thrown in the loop when it came down to the women who make the argument, like what you heard on Cat Fu, make the argument that as though this is the way it's supposed to be, that this is just a natural progression and transition, of progressiveness, and now women, we make our own money, and therefore we don't need men, right? And then it's like, you men need to go off and you need to go and do something else, completely ignoring the fact that society has to be maintained, and it is overwhelmingly maintained by men. So I forget what I was going to say. It was something I was going to say, but bottom line, we're just heading into a slow decline. You know, over time, men will lose those skills. It'll be almost like how I think happened, what happened with ancient Egypt or even ancient civilizations, because when you see the newer stuff, the stuff that's more closer to our period of time versus the stuff that's further back, clearly there was a degradation of the knowledge. Clearly, the ancient builders, the further back you go, they had knowledge and technology that we can't even begin to comprehend when you look at them moving 80-ton stones versus the newer civilizations that you see this in like freaking Pumupuku and whatnot. You got the big stones at the bottom, and then you got the little pebbles at the top. Yeah, clearly there was a loss of knowledge at some point where the first civilization rose to a particular height, something happened, that information or that knowledge was lost, and then another civilization came in, and they discovered what was left there, right, on some Planet of the Apes type of shit, with Charlton Heston and seeing the head of the Statue of Liberty, right? And then they built upon that, right? They're like, oh yeah, and then claimed it for themselves, right? So, this goes back to all that, that what's the guy, Hancock, and Zachariah snitching. He be on some other shit, talking about the Anunnaki and all that other stuff. But I'm just saying, that type of situation, that's what's going to transpire in the West, because you have men that are out of practice. They haven't been maintaining, those sorts of skills. Now, to me, I think, we have the internet, we have books, we have, all this stuff. And for, a little bit of time, that all that stuff will be preserved. So, people can go back and they can, relearn that if on an ad need basis. You know what I mean? Like certain things need to die out because that information you don't need. Like, nobody in 2023 needs to have the knowledge of how to maintain a steam locomotive. We don't use steam locomotives anymore. It's some cool shit to, fuck around and play with. They got a museum, or they got the like one steam locomotive that's still operating, and, for historical purposes, like, oh, look at this. This is how people got around in the 1800s, right? That's cool. But is it practical? No. Okay. But in any event, I always wonder, like what would be the gender dynamics in the movie WALL-E, where everybody's like floating around in their hover chairs and they're all fat, and robots are doing everything. Like, part of the problem is we're not even there yet. The other part of the issue is, despite women talk about the independence and feminism and everything else, they still want to engage in hypergamy and date up. So again, I mean, this is why they're already coming out with studies and talking about the majority of women are going to be single because, but bottom line, the men, today's men, especially combined with social media, the women are not attracted to. So women feel that they can make their own money. I don't need a man because I can make my own money. But if I did get a man, the man needs to make 5 times what I'm making in order for me to be physically and romantically and sexually attracted to him. That is a recipe for the implosion of Western civilization. And again, the feminists, the West, nobody wants to talk about, making men viable to, in the eyes of women, in terms of sexual attractiveness by having the men provide the resources. Now, I'm up for debate or discussion, about that. But again, the issue isn't even that component. The issue is having a society progress forward into this Star Trek situation where women still operate on hypergamy. Like you still have to contend with female nature, right? Like we're not living in ancient times. We're not living in the wilderness. Why does a woman need a man to be 6'5"? Why does a modern woman need a man to be that tall? Why does a modern woman need a man to be muscular? Right? We have guns. You don't need muscles. You can shoot somebody, right? We don't need muscles. Why do you need a guy to have muscles? Oh, because I like them. Okay, that's not a legitimate reason. I'm saying for thousands and thousands upon years, I mean, there were reasons, to have muscles because they were tied to survival. But what do you need that in modern times? What do you need a guy to be 6'5" for? Why can't you get with the 5'5" guy, right? I mean, hell, you can protect yourself as a woman, right? So what do you need a big cock strong dude for? Well, I mean, I like it, but you don't need it. Bitch, go get a fucking Glock 19, call it a day. You're good, right? You got the police too. You got cell phones. You call 911. What do you need men for your protection? What do you need to get with the biggest, strongest cock strong dude looking like Kimbo Slice in the room? What do you need? You don't need it. Right? Because society is modern. Yeah, but I mean, I want it. I don't want it. So like again, like I'm just saying, as a civilization, as a society, like we haven't contended with any of this shit. It's like what was that? Was that saying that guy said the fucking what was it? We have. Hold on. What is it? Wait. Oh, come on. Let me find that quote. God-like technology. What is the quote? Nah, that's not what the quote is. It was something about like we have. Damn, I can't. Institutions. I gotta find it. I said it before in another video. I just can't think of what it is off the top of my head. Anyway, it's not giving me what I want. But anyway, it said something about, I don't know if it was like we have primitive behavior or something like that. Archaic institutions while having godlike technology. And that's pretty much where we are, right now. I would kind of lay light on the godlike technology, because godlike technology is, to me, what is that? A tier 1 civilization, right? What is a tier 1? Come on, man. Tier 1 civilization. Let me see. Who cares if I misspelled it? Put the E before the I. Type 1 civilization. Type 1 civilization described blah, 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 blah. Type 1 civilization is one that has achieved full control over the energy resources available on its planet, Earth. In our case, they can harness and manipulate energy from various sources, including fossil fuels, renewable energy, nuclear power, to meet their energy needs. They have advanced technology and can effectively manage and control the planet's resources, weather patterns, and environmental systems. Okay, so that's type 1. What's type 3? Type 3 has to be Star Trek. I always get these confused. I always think type 1 is the most advanced, but it's got to be type 3. No. Type 3 civilization. Type 3 civilization. Oh, shit. Galactic energy control, interstellar travel, vast knowledge of information, with the ability to control and process energy on a galactic scale, cosmic engineering. They would possess the capability to manipulate, engineer celestial bodies. Yeah, you talking Forerunners and Halo type shit. Advanced communication within galaxy spanning civilization would be highly advanced, likely involved in instantaneous communication. Yeah, that's quantum entanglement type of shit. Potential immortality with advanced technology. Yeah, so basically they can profoundly expand their lifespans to the point of being immortal. They had a character on Star Trek one time that reached that level of immortality. They had advanced so much they reached the level of godlike status, and they were trying to guide the Star Trek characters. It was interesting. But anyway, what happens when you get to that point? I've already tried to have this conversation with Captain Solo, and he's just like, put me in a museum because I can't function like that. And again, like female, it's the whole problem with modern civilization, because the way that human beings are social beings, and I'm not saying that we aren't adaptable. Even men aren't adaptable, but the problem is that women want to have the best of both worlds. Women are the problem here. It's not men. It's not men. Men can either be productive or not productive. Okay, but women's productivity is predicated on the productivity of the men in their society. You can't have a first world economy if the men have not produced a first world economy. I direct you to, all of the African nations, that are living, well below, the whatever the poverty line for GDP is and whatnot. Like, you can sit there and you can look at that. Like this woman, KIDOLOGY, she's from South Africa. Her mother put her up, for adoption because she was a prostitute. Because why? There were no opportunities there. You know what I mean? So for her to be raised by this white family in England and sit there and think to herself like, oh, society is already built. Yeah, in England, due to the Queen of England and rape, pillage, and plunder and vacuuming resources back to good old London. Yeah, sure. But in South Africa, right, you have people living in squalor, right? You have people going without, right? Because, not only have the, South Africans not created that infrastructure, but but whatever they contribute to gets sucked up by the white people, because the white people are the ones that are in control of that situation, and they're not sharing the wealth. Again, this is what happens, if you have another patriarchy that comes in and dominates the other patriarchy. The men that are getting dominated, the women that are attached to those men, they will suffer. So whether a racial group or whether a nation, undermining your own men is the dumbest thing that you can do as a group of women. And I know what some feminists are going to say. Well, see, the problem is men need to be controlled and reduced. So you're saying that women have to subject themselves to oppression because men are just inherently violent and war with one another, right? Okay, fine. Fuck it. Let's go with that. I'm not even going to sit up here and deny it. It's a reality. It's a reality. And the thing even with that is that, you say that, but at the end of the day, bitches ain't loyal to shit. Bitches are loyal to the winners, to the fucking victors. You know what I mean? Like, they go in and another group of men goes in and conquers, and y'all want to sleep with him because you're trying to secure the bag for yourself. It's the way that it is. Sexual reproduction is not a team sport. It is an individual, what do you want to call it? It is, an individual imperative. When you get into the group stuff, like how, groups form, societies form and whatnot. Yeah. Then when you're a participating member of the group, then you get into, there's reciprocity and one looks at it from the standpoint of their survival is predicated on the survivability of the group. But that's if there's reciprocity within the society, that they have something to gain by strengthening the group. But when the group, can't, sustain itself, right? Everybody wants to leave. Everybody wants to, there's an exodus, right? And this goes for both the men and the women, because it's a failed state. Right. And you'll see this obviously in the black community in America, with African American men wanting to hop the fence, African American women who hop in the fence. But you also see this even in the dominant group in the white society. Let a white woman have a poor white father and let her be beautiful. She don't give a fuck about what her race loyalty is. She's going where the bag is. Women are not race loyal like that. They're loyal to the bag. They're loyal to, having a greater, higher quality of life. But the thing is like, where do you draw the line on, uh, uh, you know, correcting the problem, or being loyal to the group that's dominating, or being loyal to the group that's resisting? Where do you draw the line? Because no other group is going to value you as much as your own, when, all those things are in place, the family structure and everything else like that. No other group is going to value. No other group is going to value your womb, unless it gets to a point where, the group has been conquered. The men basically come in, rape and pillage, create a whole bunch of halfling children, pretty much what you see in East Africa with the Somalis and whatnot. Arabs came in there, fucked a whole bunch of African women, and then rolled the fuck out, and then got, sitting in Saudi Arabia talking about who's an Abid. You know what I mean? It's fucking crazy shit, right? Every time the Somalis do their DNA, you know what I mean? Like more than 50% of them, they got that big ass, usually they'll have a map and they'll have like a big ass purple oval circle around Saudi Arabia. And then they'll have like another like deeper purple around Somalia. I'm like, yeah, because again, Zaddy DNA come from over there, because they were the ones that were running around conquering, rape, pillaging, and plundering. That's why you don't look like the rest of the African continent. But they'll swear up and down, no, we are our own people, and when we originated, from here in the vacuum. And I'm like, you live on the coast. People were trading, people were exchanging ideas, people were exchanging religions, and they was fucking. You know what I mean? Like, god damn, I can't stand it. Same with the North Africans and whatnot. Fucking Italy and Rome and Greek and shit right across the fucking water. The Carthage, what is it? The Carthaginians. You know what I'm saying? Right, of Carthage. Right, motherfuckers came right across. You go into North Africa, they got all type of Greek and Roman amphitheaters, all in North Africa, all in the Near East. Right? Because of the expansion of the Roman Empire. People were going other places and they was fucking. You know what I mean? But people want to sit there and they want to ignore that shit. Anyway, I'm just saying that, if when it comes to, no group is going to value you more than your own group. And if you have something and you want to keep it and you want to value it and you want to protect it and everything, you do not undermine your own group of men. And that's again, I can talk about it from the racial standpoint. I could talk about it from the nation standpoint, which involves multiple races. It just let me know what the parameters are that we're having the discussion with. Because the same concept applies. Now, the things that I won't, put on women are like the shifting economy. That has nothing to do with women. The economy going to us, deindustrializing and going to us. That has nothing to do with women. That has to do with, in this system of capitalism, the white oligarchs and the white, CEOs and, millionaires and billionaires that are like, if I take this company overseas, I can, produce X for cheaper. Right? I don't have to pay these men these American wages. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. That is a part of capitalism. You are competing in the economic marketplace. As far as capitalism, oh yeah, thumbs up all day. But as far as the underlying fabric of patriarchy in America, oh no, you done fucked up. You done completely undermined that. And now you got a whole generation of, we got to build more prisons because the men are failing and we're going to throw them in jail. And I'm like, and then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're not even going to have a welfare state because you're taking more money out of the system, giving it to women, right? Then you have men putting money, into the system. You don't have enough men engaging in capitalism. And then you have women going out here, the men that are free are unproductive, and then you end up with more unproductive males. It's just a matter of time before, the rising army hordes from some other nation, decide to fucking try you when they recognize that your defenses are down. They're like, wait a minute, man. They ain't got no warriors over there. Why don't we go over there and take that bitch over? Right? That's what white people did. That's what Europeans did when they went all around the world. Right? Go in there, facilitate division. Oh, you don't like that guy over there? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, if you help stab him in the back for us, you know what I'm saying? We'll break you off a little bit of something, right? And that's what they did, right? Battle of Plassey, right? The with the what was who were they dealing with in China during the opium wars, but situations like that, same thing in Japan, right? You go in there, you divide, you divide and conquer. It's a classic example. And you can divide and conquer internally with the men themselves, right? The whatever factions vying for power who think that somehow if they help you win that they're going to get more control. They may have more control than what they had previously, but no, it was just so that you could Trojan horse your way in the door, and then conquer them, right? Or you can do it through the women. I mean, so you can undermine them that way, right? Same way, black girl magic, you go girl. Yeah, let's support black women. Let's encourage black women. Yeah, because they don't want strong black men. Even though the strong black men are the only ones that would, police the community and maintain the community and engage in all of that, which is why where you wouldn't see the smash and grabs and shit like that. The smash and grabs that you see going on in the black community are that is a direct result of white supremacy destroying black patriarchy. That's the funny part. When you hear conservatives talk about, the problem with the black community is there's no fathers in the home. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you. How do we get fathers in the home? And they'll be like, well, they just need to be there. These men are going to need to be gainfully employed. But we can't support black men being gainfully employed because then they would challenge us. Okay, then. Well, then take these smash and grabs then. Accept that. That's what's going to happen. So you got these little internal conflicts in America, between the races, that totally undermine the overarching, concept that is America. So, like I said, I can attack it from any angle of this prism. At the end of the day, we have female nature, where women only want to date up, and hypergamy, and they're hardwired to operate like that. And then we have the reality that men are the primary ones who build, maintain, and defend the physical infrastructure of society. And the only reason why women are in the position that they're in is because men facilitated that. It's almost like when you're dealing with, freaking, foreigners when they come to America, these non-white foreigners, and it's like the only reason you're here is because black people fought for civil rights. If black people didn't fight for civil rights, if there was no 1965 civil rights bill, like your ass would be back home where you at. Because, white America was like, we don't want anybody else who ain't white. We got the slave population. We don't know what to do with them. Sending them back to Africa is too expensive. We tried that with Liberia and Monrovia, but we don't feel like, that there's millions of these black folks. We ain't paying for all that. Fuck that. We got them over here, but we ain't about to correct the problem. Fuck that. They just gonna have to live in squalor and just be and exist in this system of white supremacy. Right? Like the guy said in that documentary about redlining, he was like, we had an opportunity after World War II, when it came to, giving black people, access to capital and property and being able to, integrate communities. We had an opportunity, right? When they were building all the houses and doing all the Levittown and building the highways and stuff, they had an opportunity and they fucked it up. The white people fucked it up. They created the situation that you see. And now, like, the stupid part is that, you know, now that the racial shit is like, black people are basically like seen as this permanent underclass that can never recover, right? Even the white oligarchy, has essentially done the same thing to the white working class or the white middle class, and now they're going into decline. And you have it at a time where women are, pushing for more feminism because they're finding less and less men that are economically viable for them to date. And this is disastrous for society. Women somehow think that, they're going to, the men are, oh, you guys haven't, you need to rise to the occasion. How do they rise to the occasion of a standard that you fought against so that you could be equal to them or surpass them? They can't correct the problem with, more patriarchy. They can't correct the problem with more, them making more money, because as soon as they make more money, the first thing out of your mouth is going to be, well, I need to make more money myself. Right? So there's nothing that men can do to correct this problem. This is a woman problem. This is a female nature woman problem. I can't stand when women they talk this shit like, what needs to happen is men had just suddenly woke up one day and decided not to be productive. And that's what the real problem is. And they're not on my level. And if they were on your level or above, you would be bitching that this isn't hypergamy, or excuse me, this isn't equality. Right? Then when they're on your level, you usually bitch, or they're below your level, more certainly, then you bitch that you're not engaging in, or winning in the department of hypergamy. It's the dumb. This is the most circular, going nowhere type of argument. At the end of the day, family is a huge motivator for men. Like when you see movies like, A Quiet Place, where the dad basically sacrifices himself to save his children. You know what I mean? Men will die for shit like that. They'll die for their kids, right? They'll die to protect their family so that, their DNA, their lineage, their bloodline, the essence of them lives on. You know what I mean? But you're not going to be able to get men to be motivated to go out here and be productive, in a situation where they don't have access to, women, children, and family. You're not going to have underneath patriarchy. Because the whole concept of patriarchy is, like children don't come out of men. Without patriarchy, there's no real attachment. There's no real, connection there that this is your responsibility. They just get reduced to fucking sperm donors. And again, if men are smart, they won't donate the sperm because of all the institutional stuff, these archaic court systems that still operate like it's 1955 and women don't work and men make all the shmoney. And I'm not saying that we have to go back to, some type of sort of system that's that extreme. But this idea that, America's future is for us to have a society where, it's just a bunch of office spaces and cubicles and we're going to service industry our way into the future is got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You got China running around, even they're scrambling because, they got a society where people want to go and they want to get these white collar degrees, but yet they don't want to engage in any of the vocations because the vocations are not prestigious enough for the women to deem those men to be good husbands. It's not just about, men's motivation is a woman or men's motivation is pussy. No. It's tied. Both of you can't have a family if you don't get both of those things. If you ain't getting a woman and you ain't getting no pussy, you can't produce children, and therefore you can't have a family. So when people are like, "Oh, women can't be your main motive," well, what's the motivation? I had to throw at Cap. I was like, okay, you want to talk about fixing the community and doing all this shit, okay? And if men are not getting married, what is the fucking point? He was like, "What do you mean? You know what I mean? You got some kick ass shit, and then what? And then you die, and then everything that you built, all the kick-ass shit that you got, it falls into disrepair. People will, come into your house after you've been dead for fucking, 3 days and shit, and your cat has been nibbling at your fucking body. They walk through your house and fucking, say, "Oh, look at all the cool shit he had, and look at the train set he had, and man, this is real interesting." And then they clean that bitch out, and then somebody else fucking moves in. That's what happens. When you don't have a family and you're not passing, there's nothing about your essence that's continuing on, just nothing. You know what I mean? Like that's not a place where men are going to be motivated to be as productive as they can possibly be. It's just not. So when we talk about, fixing the community and everything, and I fully admit that, there's a whole bunch of resentment towards black women at this point. When we talk specifically about the black community, there's a whole bunch of resentment. Where I feel like, if the men, like they're like, and we might be past the point of no return, not just the black community, but also America as well, where the men are they're so fed up with these women's arrogance. You know what I mean? The way that they just went turncoat the minute that they got $5 in their pocket. You know what I mean? If there was ever some sort of wave to correct this, I don't think that any of these Western men would be picking Western women. I think that there would be a significant, noticeable portion of these men that would go off and they would start families with other women that they don't have that sort of toxic history with. That's what I think is going to happen. I mean, I was listening to Undead Chronic. You know how fucking bigoted Undead Chronic is. You know how fucking racist he is, low key racist. He tries to hide it, but it's there. But even he, of all people, made a video talking about basically going over and getting some Asian bitch in Asia because white Western women are ruined with their feminism. I'm like, you got, it's that bad that you got a white supremacist basically saying that he ain't gonna fuck with white bitches. Now he might just be talking some shit. You know what I'm saying? He might just be talking some shit, because I'm like, come on, man. There's got to be at least one out there that you can fucking get with and get with the program. I don't believe that we're at, freaking DEFCON 5, 99, percent, of women are on this shit. But at the same time, no, it is a significant problem. It is absolutely a significant problem. But nah, if this society does not do something to improve the viability of men, with women, because women will sit there and be like, "Oh, patriarchy is archaic and it's old school and everything." Okay, bitch, well then hypergamy is archaic and old school. But see, notice how the women ain't about to give that shit up. And I'm not saying that they should. But I'm saying to have this situation where women can go out there and do whatever they want to do, and we making the money, and we doing this, and we're on OnlyFans, and we're balling out of control, and we still want to date up, and we're not going to support anything to keep the men viable, and we're going to say smash the patriarchy, and patriarchy is a problem. Like I said, I hope you don't need any bridges being built. I hope you don't need any infrastructure being maintained. You know what I mean? Because when it comes down to men doing all that stuff, you can point. This is what the boomers do. They're lazy because they don't want to do this. No, they're not lazy. It's like quiet quitting, right? Why should I work and do all this stuff if at the end of the day it's going to equate to me having nothing? It's going to equate to me not getting any of the things that I want to get out of life. Why should I engage? Why should I work harder at your job? Why should I stay late? Why should I do extra shit? Right? It's not going to equate to anything. And that's another thing when people abuse the system. I'm like, nobody's going to want to do any of that stuff when they don't see you rewarding the people that go the extra mile. No, they're not going to want to do that. Same thing with defunding the police. The police needed to be reformed, not defunded, reformed. And again, I'm open to suggestions about patriarchy and, what's wrong with patriarchy? Like one of the things that Ali Wong brought up, that is, accurate, that men don't have to balance work and fatherhood. They can hide not being there for their family behind work. I know men that are doing that currently right now. I know men they're even, they're divorced and they haven't, I'm getting messages from their wife, non-black person, about how, the husband, or excuse me, the ex-husband or her ex-husband hasn't seen their child in 4 weeks because he's in another state on business. Right? And men will hide behind. I'm saying, that is something that men will hide by, hide. Oh, I'm handling my patriarchal responsibilities. Leave me alone, bitch. Right? They'll hide behind that. Yeah, that's something we could have a discussion about. To sit there and say we must throw the baby out with the bathwater, abolish patriarchy altogether, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And that's currently where we are. Again, defund the police. Okay, now the police ain't policing. Everybody's bitching. Oh, there's so much crime. Oh, crime went through the roof. Oh, it's like, weren't you the one screaming defund the police? We didn't need police. And again, I look at it the same way when I look at patriarchy. Like the women. Oh my God, my pipes burst. Oh my God, there's potholes in the street. Oh my God, the air conditioner broke. Oh my God, the power grid went out. Oh my God, right? I'm like, weren't you the one saying that men are not needed, men are not necessary? And the truth be told, like all these positions, all that sort of vocational maintenance work, that is at the bottom rung of what women think is sexy. That is at the bottom rung. You gotta have women want to date dudes with masters and doctorates and JDs and PhDs and because it equates to a certain standard of living and lifestyle, right? They think that blue collar workers don't make any money. So people talk about we got to make America great again. No, we got to make some of these necessary and needed jobs great again. That's what needs to happen. And paying people handsomely to where young men would be like, hey man, when I get out, I'm gonna go to this trade, I'm gonna go do this and do that, so that I can get the big bucks, as opposed to, thinking that working some white collar job is the way to go. And a lot of these white collar jobs, there's a lot of jobs that guys are, they look the part and they only making, $40,000, $55,000 a year. Oh, they look the part. Oh, he's suited and booted and everything. But the reality is a lot of those entry level jobs, when you first get in, they don't pay shit. They don't pay shit. But just listening to Kidology and this whole thing about Barbie and I mean, the key thing that she said in there that was just completely out of pocket and fucked up was, you all need to go do something else. And I'm like, I really hope you know what that means. Because what that means, a great many things. That means men shutting down. That means men engaging in, video games. That means men engaging in other things, outdoors shit. That means men, and because this is what the majority of men are going to do, they're just going to go and choose a woman from a community or a society that is more patriarchal, that hasn't gotten to gone to the lengths or fallen to the extreme of, what you hear coming from feminist in the West or womanist or whatever other redefining things, making up term shit that these women want to do. I'm like, society will collapse. You may not feel it. If you got kids, they damn sure are going to feel it. They damn sure are going to feel it. Just as we feel it now, based on, a lot of the things that the fucking boomers have done with like the housing market and shit like that. They bought a house for fucking, $50,000 in fucking the early 80s or something like that. And now, that house is ballooned up to, $700,000, something crazy. So, I mean, I know houses that were were in the 90s, they were bought for about 400,000, just under 400,000, and now are pushing $1 million. And it's like, and I mean, you could go, I mean, you just pull this shit right up on, like, just look at, because if you go on like Zillow, you can see old price, like what the house originally was purchased for, and then what the house, is worth now. And it's retarded. And I said this shit years ago. I was like, what is it? I remember thinking this way after watching Michael Rupert's documentary Collapse, where he said that capitalism and pretty much all the other systems are predicated on infinite growth. Infinite growth. And I'm like, well, it's impossible. Like, how can you have housing prices blow up like that and wages just stay stagnant? Now, I hear people talking about the great transfer when the boomers die and all that other stuff, but man, it shouldn't be that way. People shouldn't have to start their lives, especially for millennials, in middle age. That shit is retarded. And again, society is going to pay for that. We are going to head towards, the, upside down population triangle looking like Japan. And that again, I do not understand a nation not making its young people viable, so that they engage in producing children underneath the proper circumstances. Because if you don't have that, then you end up with the kids being born in poverty, single motherhood. They have social and behavioral problems, antisocial behavior, so on and so forth. And then you have other problems that you have to deal with, like smash and grabs, like carjackings, like home invasions, like inner city, male, violence, right? Male on male violence, black on black violence. Right? You have all these other forms of men trying to find ways to gain a positive male identity and engage in what would be considered toxic masculinity that's not connected to family, that's not connected to community, that's not connected to any of these things. And I know the religious people are going to come in and be like, no, it's because we're not reading the Bible. We're not reading the Quran. We're not reading the... None of that fucking matters, because the economic opportunities are not there, or the ones that are there don't pay enough for a man to, basically facilitate a solid foundation to raise a family, which would even have women look in his direction, whether the woman is feminist or not. Okay, at the end of the day, you got to get around women's hard wiring. It doesn't matter what the fuck they say. It's about what they do. This is why some people think, Ray Ray and Pookie and the thugs and all that, they have cheated the system, because they've essentially bypassed all that, and they can get to a woman when her mind is not psychologically, developed, and she's more about her emotions when she's younger, bang her out, pump her up full of a fucking baby, and now she's a single mom running around here. Because most of these women are not becoming single moms because they got married, then said, I'm not happy, no fault divorce, and then got a divorce and took the house and the kids, and then now they're a single mom living in the big house. No, that's not the majority of single mothers out here. The majority of them were fucking around with a dude that was, ooh, he was dripping in swag juice. They go and they get with that guy and have his baby. And then they're a single mom living in poverty, talking about what I feel I deserve, at 32, with a fucking, with a fucking, 10-year-old, so, these are the type of things that fucking, that go on. And I don't see a solution. I don't see a solution. I so want to say, I want men to just walk away and let society collapse. So that, I mean, not just women feel it. I want boomers to feel it. I want fucking, all these, whoever these oligarchs that are sitting behind an oak, I want them to feel it. I want all of them to feel it. But the reality is many of them have enough resources and millions to cushion themselves. But then again, when the environment becomes so toxic, like out there in San Francisco, homeless people all over the place. Yeah, now you got a homeless person taking a shit right in front of your door. You see what I'm saying? Like, so all this, that's not by me. I won't be affected by that. I'm like, oh yeah, eventually, once you get past critical mass, it'll affect you. Eventually, all the drugs that people are doing in Kensington, eventually that will spread and spill out into some of the nicer neighborhoods. You're like, honey, I walked out this morning and there was a homeless man, sleeping on my stoop. You know what I mean? Like, see, that's when you know you done fucked up. That's when, and see, you know what's so fucked up about all this? It is way more difficult to fix all of that once it's broken than it is to prevent it from breaking in the first place. It's like a glass chalice or something like that, right? Like now we're sitting here trying to tape the glass and glue the glass back together with all the fragmented pieces. I'm like, why didn't you just not, freaking, have the glass sitting at the edge of the table? Put the glass in the middle of the table. That way, if it falls over, it just simply tips over and you can just reorient it and, sit it back up. But no. Your dumb ass wanted to have it at the end of the table and you fucked around and found out. Now the glass is broken. Now you talking about, oh, what can we do to fix this? I'm like, chances are nothing. Chances are nothing. Like, again, the way I feel about it, I almost feel like society doesn't deserve to not feel the impact of what it has done to men over, I'd say, the last, 30 years or so. I'm like, nah, you need to feel that shit. All of society needs to feel that shit. But you know what the sad part is even with the women, they're not going to wake up. They're not going to have their, come to fucking Jesus moment. They're not going to be like, oh my God, we were just so wrong. Like, no. They're going to be like, you all aren't being real men. You're not doing what other men are doing. You're not doing like what the Asian men are doing. Let me tell you, I went to Japan and I was in Okinawa and then I went to Tokyo and it was just such a wonderful experience and the streets were clean and there was just so much technology. I mean, they're just living in the future and America is just so dirty. And let me tell you, I went to Dubai and Dubai was one of the safest, cleanest societies in the world. And it was just so great and wonderful. What happened to all that shit that you was talking about? Islam and the Muslims and how they oppress the women and all that. What happened to all that shit? You know what I'm saying? Look, I'm not the biggest fan of religion, but it's just funny how now all of a sudden, oh, Dubai is such a beautiful place. We need to go to Dubai. I want to have the Dubai lifestyle. Oh my God. Everybody had luxury vehicles and they had Ferraris and Lambos and Aventadors and oh my God. And I was picked up in a taxi and you know what the taxi was? It was a Rolls Royce. Oh my God. And and see the problem is that's why women are leaving America because American men they just failed and they just can't do and that's what the problem is. I'm like, oh my God. But we're not going to talk about all that feminism that you were talking and pushing and all the reviews of the Barbie movie and how men need to go off and do something else to motivate them, right? Because you do realize all the places that you name, strong patriarchy, right? You do realize that, right? When it comes to them, maintaining and all that, you do realize that, right? Right? That women play their role and men play their role and it's pretty much locked in. There's no fluidity of gender. You do realize that, right? So you can't convince these women, man. Their minds are made up. The West is in a death spiral, and all I'm gonna for the next couple of years, all we're gonna see is a bunch of old people getting on Fox News and getting on TV talking about, well, in my day, see, the problem is, and it's all going to be men's fault. They're all going to blame it on men. They're going to say the problem is men aren't working hard enough and they're not motivated and the millennials and the zillennials and they lazy and da-da-da. They're going to say all of that shit. All that shit. I mean, they need to get up in the morning and make their $45,000 a year, and then maybe one day they'll be able to afford this $750,000, 4-bedroom, a rancher, with a 1-car garage, just maybe, that's the world that we live in. Anyway, I'm done. That's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe. That's all I got to say. That's all I got for you, because I realize I've been spending a little bit too much time making some of these videos, especially like these longer videos. I thought I was going to make a shorter video, but I didn't. But anyway, you know how that goes. That's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.